betterbuild.ie, the website for this conference, will have a facility to keep the conversation going. We want to build the conversation to 2013, Better Build 2013, so keep the conversation going. Okay, keynote listeners. I thought Mike Haslam was a keynote listener. Is he not there? There he is. Do we have 3 keynote listeners? Okay. The keynote listeners, the objective here was to listen, to hear the presentations, the chat, and then in 5 minutes summarize what they heard. So you don't have to tell us everything. Who'd like to go first? Do you want to speak from there? Or?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hang on. Oh.
Yeah, you can now.
Can you hear me now? Dumb. This is an impossible task to do, which is a great way of starting off. Literally, we were the roving ears, I suppose, going through the various presentations. Very hard to synopsize in 5 minutes, but I'll just give my thoughts on a few as we went through the day. First one, to recap back to this morning, if you can cast your mind back to this morning, because I think our ears and our heads are jammed with information. Carrying on from what the keynote speaker, Adrian Joyce, was saying about the Renovate Europe Fund, huge initiative to get our stock of buildings reduced by 80% efficiency in 2050. Huge task to look at, including bringing our GDP, our investment from 1.2% to 3% per annum by 2020 in terms of renovation. Trying to get the money that we spend in fueling our buildings and pulling that back into actually renovating them. Quite an extreme range of views. But if you look at the size of the building stock in Europe, I think there was a figure said that the whole of Belgium would cover the amount of, which to us is the size of Munster, the building stock that's actually in use at the moment. Rates of construction are stopping. 90% of buildings will still be here by 2050, not including protected ones, obviously they'll stay. But there's a roadmap obviously there. But the return they're seeing from various previous examples, for example, the GFW in Germany, is that for every €5, for every €1 invested, you get a €5 return, which is pretty impressive for the pension funds if they were to actually take this on board as part of their way of getting funding. Huge jump then to Seamus Holt from IT in Tralee about the lack of skills on the ground. So how does that translate into actually the renovation projects of the people doing them on the ground, the people hammering in the nails and punching those VCLs? So his proposal, or what he's doing at the moment is a status quo, what is happening in the construction status. A lot of people have left, as we know, and with that a lot of knowledge is left. So hopefully by the end of, by spring 2013, there'll be something that's published there. Essentially what he's looking for is a safe pass for energy on site and a technical and energy supervisor on site. Quickly onto late this morning, there was talk about post-occupancy evaluation. Brian Calvin gave a talk on the winner of the RIAI Sustainable Award last year, which is Robocall, the largest passive house residential development in Ireland. It talked about the transient nature of those occupants, which is quite difficult. There's 133 people different every year, which is incredible. If you took the passive house log is about 15 kilowatts per annum per metre. The design was at 12, and currently they're looking at, because it's F17, there was problems in the windows which are adopted. Conversely, that would compare to a Partel of 55 kilowatts per hour per year, so it's a huge difference. Peter Flint from Arup had a very interesting way of approaching post-occupancy evaluation and energy efficiency. Forget about the kilowatts per metre per square, concentrate on the person and how much that person actually used. He used a summary of a servant, a Victorian servant, using 1 kilowatt per person per day. And that would use about 100 kilowatts per day. A commercial typically would use, a person in a commercial building would use 31 kilowatts a day, compared to 12 kilowatts is what their current building that Arabs use in the Docklands. This would upset. This comes down to €150,000 difference per year, which is pretty impressive. Paul Boylan's talked about the stock of work. Part-L, there was a huge discussion, obviously, back from the ground, and the one I was most impressed with was from GEM, from the contractor's point of view, about what they're doing to try to upskill their staff in tackling Part-L, from holding on-site and getting the suppliers of all the particular tapes and whatever to tell them what to do. Gavin O'Shea went around with his I was going to say Peter meter, but his array of detectors, see what leaks were there, and Kevin Fay talked about construction. Now,
we're going to have to go faster now,
because I can't go on.
Next keynote listener, and just your observations, just your reflections.
I think, and it was a very comprehensive report. My report won't be as comprehensive, I assure you, but that was very good. I suppose I was just trying to pick up on some of the messages really from today. The one thing I've picked up is it was an excellent conference, and it was great to have everybody under one roof, so to speak. I think for the first venture of its kind, I'd like to say well done to Pat Barry and all the team that put together today. I suppose I picked up more of my bits and pieces out over coffee and lunch, and just kind of messages that I actually found it necessary to write down was some of the drivers. You know, what's driving the change that we all talk about are we all waiting on legislation, or is it about trying to promote better behaviour? That seemed to come out a lot in a lot of the talks that I went to. I suppose in addition to that, we tend to look outward a lot. We bring a lot of people in from Europe to look at best practice, which is excellent, and we had some excellent examples of best practice internationally brought here today. But we also get to highlight and showcase what we're good at. We've had an unprecedented period where the experience gained in Ireland is huge. You know, I compared an analogy where I was in a people carrier just outside Moscow on the way to a site. I think it was in 2006. With a guy with a white beard, and he said, you know, who are you? And I said, I'm a senior engineer. And he said, you couldn't be, because I didn't have a white beard. But just because of the experience that we've had, you know, we have a lot of projects under our belt, and we can export that elsewhere. I was hugely impressed with Tomás O'Leary and the whole Passive House area. I'm, again, from an engineering background. I feel it's an architecturally dominated area, needs more engineering input in there. That was clear today, because I felt there was confusion around cooling and ventilation, and they're two different things, particularly as applied to kitchens and catering, and I'd like to have maybe a discussion about that over a glass of wine later. But I think Tomás O'Leary's, this whole exporting this expertise around the world, we should celebrate that. I really enjoyed the environmental assessment tools discussion that was hosted by Vivian, because we're trying to get to a point here where we can not make recommendations, but clearly show which may be the best system to use. We need a system for sure. We're bringing in bespoke versions of other systems. We need our own system that's easy to use and doesn't add a huge transactional cost to a project. I think that's probably one of the key barriers there for clients considering it. So other than that, I was just very pleased with the day and with how it all went, and how the speakers delivered their points very effectively. So thank you.
Thank you. You're going to have your opportunity to have reflections as well. So the last keynote listener, Mick Haslam, your reflections, please.
Hello. Yeah, again, well done on organisation. Very good. And also the chairing, the speakers, etc. There's a bit of overlap here, but I'm going to talk about three of the four that I went to. The Passive House one again. I think what struck me particularly about that, particularly from in addition to what the inspiration that Tomás O'Leary was giving us, was Jonathan Hines and Adam Cohen, very much talking about the rigour and the discipline of Passive House, and how important that was, both at a design level and also as construction level. I think that sort of following through the buy-in that Jonathan talked about, and obviously Adam through his design build anyway, the buy-in of the contractor into the whole process been fundamental. And I think again a point that Adam made, which is something along the lines of it's the pre-qualification certificate, it's the crucial bit. That gives you the discipline. Follow up on that. The rest is the icing on the cake. So very good. I think that was a very convincing set of talks about the future of Passive House, and also in a sense that there's a discipline that we can relatively I think fair to say, easily understand and work with. Next one was yours, Davie, the Sustainable Communities in Practice, which was talking a lot about the transition town movement, both here in Ireland and in the UK. Clough Jordan in particular, which I think is a great ongoing, and I will call it an experiment to some degree, because I think there's a lot of conclusions can't be reached yet on Clough Jordan. Where that's going, the big question there, how do we build resilience? And resilience being not just about environmental per se, but also about the social and the economical resilience of a community. Chris Bird, broadening that to some degree, because there was also a discussion about how you widen this. So it's not just about communities that have already bought into this structure, but those who might normally not be interested at all in resilience, environmental sustainability, etc. And I think the idea of transition streets, which were targeting very particular communities and bringing them into, through a series of workbooks, community engagement, we're sort of bringing them in, bringing them on board. And Yvonne Cullinan, again, likewise, with a whole series of projects, which were really, I think there was one particular thing she said, which was, it's not just we should widen or leave the debate behind of is this a bottom-up or a top-down approach, but actually we're talking about creative, collaborative partnerships, and this is the way forward. And then finally, the future of aesthetics debate with Merritt Buchholz, Dermot Boyd, Jay Carty, Joe Little, and chaired by Michelle Fagan, which was, I think Michelle finished it on a rather optimistic note. I don't know how optimistic it was. I think there's still a lot of debate to be had there. One particular issue, I think, about what the regulations are going to be doing to us in terms of Part L, how we'll respond to that. And I think the various speakers from the floor and from the table were saying, look, we'll absorb this. We will make that part of our aesthetic, and something new, something good will grow out of that. Certainly an idea of an art of responsibility. And one point that really struck me from Joseph Little was that it was sort of building on a point made that architecture is the science and art of building. And that Joseph was saying, yep, it is that, but we're too light on the science. We're too soft on the science. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. So let's spend a couple of minutes getting your reflections. Anyone want to give your reflections of the day, something that resonated with you? And just while we're getting a mic to whoever wants to do it, there's 2 assessment forms in your pack. One from Better Build to help us improve and make better the Better Build conference in 2013, and one from the Irish Green Business Council on assessments, which Vivian, where's Vivian? She's somewhere, and she's going to be collecting, there you are, there, she's going to be collecting them throughout the network break on the way out. So please, it helps us, help us to help you. Okay, any reflections from anyone? Would anyone like to share their thoughts from the day? We're not opening up, it's not questions, just reflections. Duncan.
I just think, first of all, I think there was such a good choice of things to attend. It is very hard to make that decision. But at the same time, probably we need more dialogue, more interaction. Maybe if there could be more time that could go into the discussion so that we could even reach some sort of conclusions at the end of each session. Or there's a lot of very interesting and very knowledgeable people here today, and to be able to kind of use that huge resource under one room in an effective way would be great if we could come up with some method that we could kind of get better value out of all of the people that have attended here today and that have contributed. I just think there's huge potential there if we could exploit that side a bit more.
Yep.
And probably to some follow-on method that we could apply. In other words, that we go out of this room, we go home, and rather than forget, that we can kind of build on what we've got and continue the dialogue, continue the interaction through the internet or through other methods. But that would be my kind of
Great, thank you, Duncan.
Just on that, if I may, the DIT did that very recently with a conference that ended, and they were still literally in mid-conversation, and they continued it on in that forum for weeks afterwards, just continuing on those discussions.
So betterbuild.ie is the forum to continue that. Also, just so you know that the conversations that we've had today are going somewhere, a document has been created, and Minister Phil Hogan, who spent 10 minutes with us this morning, unfortunately that's all he spent, is going to review that document. He's promised to do that. So at least there is some sort of following. But thank you, Duncan. They're great observations. Anyone else before we go, or will we wrap up? One over here.
It's actually for myself. Just on that note of continuing the conversation, we have a LinkedIn event page set up. So we can post that in the next tweet with a link, so you can actually network with each other on LinkedIn and discuss thereafter. And by all means, there's a Facebook page and Twitter, so there's plenty of choices. Thanks.
Great. Last chance. Don't see any hands. Okay, we're going to go into the networking. Now, this networking session isn't an opportunity to talk about the same things you always talk about with the same people you always talk about those things with. This is an opportunity to meet different people and talk about different things and be exposed to different ideas and different things that are going on in this country, in this sector. So there's your objective.